Hello everybody and welcome to my video on how to create group frequency tables or relative frequency tables. I got three examples on three different methods. Our author kind of implicitly talks about various groupings based upon the data. So one of the first one I would like to take a look at with you guys is this: a researcher wants to determine televisions in a household. So if we click on this little drop down here, we get our tables, our data, and let's just notice that this data set comes to us. It's integered value, it's discrete data, and notice that the range of values is small or short. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so there's not a wide range of data values going on here. So this is what we call to group the data. It does have a name to it. Our author doesn't mention this, but he says that when you have a small range of data and their integered value, to that the data values, just like with the qualitative, the data values themselves, as you can see right here in our video here, the data values form the classes or bins. Now I'm used to calling these things bins, so whether I use bin or classes, I use those words interchangeably. So please note that I am not here to show you how to do your homework, but I do have this data set here, and I'd like to go ahead and bin this data up and show you how to use StatCrunch to do this. So if you click here and then open these up, then you have this little pop-up thing right here. And if you click this, just like before, you can just open this data set up in StatCrunch. So I come back over here. I'm going to just close this out of the way. And notice that the data are here. So when we have integered value and the data are going to form their own classes, there's really not much that we have to do. So if we come over here to stat, tables, and then frequency, don't forget to choose your variable. And you can choose frequency, and if you press the control button or the command button on Apple, you can choose all of these things here, and you can kind of knock them out at once as you're working your homework or your quiz, in which I'm also trying to prepare you for your project. So if you click compute, boom, here they are. So notice we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have our data values here, frequencies are here, relative frequency, cumulative frequencies. So we have everything. So all you then technically would have to do is come right over here and fill in these blanks and fill in those blanks right there. Now again, feel free to manually do these if you so choose. Again, all you would have to do is click the window, click, and then count up how many zeros, and then count up how many ones, twos, and so forth. Okay? So when you have discrete data and a small range, by that, it's not the number of values, because here we have 40, but it's the range of values. Okay? One of the things you might want to do is when it comes up to your project is you need to take this table and copy and paste. So basically what you have to do is come in here and click inside this table and do a Command A or Apple Control A, and then do a Command C to copy or a Control C. And then if you want to pull up your Word document, all you have to do is come over here and Control V, and you can clear this thing out, and you can do update, especially for when it comes to your project, to make this thing look kind of nice. And if you need to, you can just bring those over and do all kinds of little tweakings here. And if you want, you can come over here and do number of televisions. Okay, so you got this table and it's already in your Word document. So that gets us covered on creating a group frequency table. When we have using this thing, it's called the single value limit. single value grouping, I should say. The next thing would be a graph. So to do a histogram, we just come over here, click histogram. Again, choose your variable. There's nothing special going on at this point in time, so it will go ahead and do a frequency, or if you need a relative frequency, you can do that. So you click compute. Now the only problem is with StatCrunch, the bars are technically supposed to be butted up against one another. I haven't figured out how to remove this space. So for right now, until I get it figured out, we don't have to worry about it. But to copy the graph, you just click this options, come down here to copy, and notice it says control click the image and then choose copy image. So I'm going to go and put my cursor right here. I am holding, even on my Mac, the control click copy image is right here. For those of you on the Windows, it would be a command. So I'm just going to pull back up my thing right here, and then it's command V or control V, and you go ahead and paste. This is about the best we can do, again, until I can figure out how to close that space between the bars on StatCrunch. I'm not sure how to do it, but you know what, c'est la vie. We'll all live. All right, so this is the single value grouping, and notice over here on this particular exercise, which you may see something, you can go ahead and put the values in, and then it's going to ask you a couple of questions, and then again, you would have to pick your histogram based off of the frequency, and this one's based off the relative frequency. The nice thing is that the frequency and the relative frequency, the graphs, look exactly the same. So again, you can manually zoom in on these things, zoom out, but here I recommend, again, if you really want to take a sharp look, take a look at the pop-out window, and it'll bring it up to you. Okay, so I'm going to probably not talk about this pop-out thing in the upcoming grouping types. So that will complete the our discussion on the single value grouping. So we will be off to the next one. All right, our next grouping involves discrete data, but in this case, the discrete data has a larger range of values. So as we can easily see, you can take a look and peek see at this data set, and you can notice that we go from, looks like the smallest is 3, all the way up to like 13, it looks like. So the range of the values is different than our previous grouping. And so now we have to actually bin the data. So the author talks about the bins or the classes. They have to be between 5 and 20. Okay, and a lot of times we will give you a starting point, and then you can, and the number of bins. We can give you the starting point and the, bin width or the class width, and the computer will go ahead and do this for us. The software will do this for us. Or another thing we can do is you can figure this out kind of on your own, where we just tell you the number of classes. So if you look on the formula that is in the textbook in chapter 2.1, there is a maximum value minus the minimum value, and you divide that by the number of bins. You do a little roundup, and that will give you another way of doing this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this started. So I'm going to click up here again. Yeah, you get the answers here. So here you would have had to have answered this question first. But notice here on the second part, it's going to ask you to construct a frequency or a relative frequency. And technically speaking, that, you know, the author really kind of stresses this. There should be no overlap in the bins. So the bins should be discrete, or they should be disjoint. That means they have no overlap, but we're going to have to discuss this here in just a few minutes. And so Here, what they've told us is we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 bins, and the bin widths. Now here you have to be very careful. The bin widths is the difference in the lower class limits. All right, so the class limits, the lower class limit for this first bin is 1, and the upper class limit is 3. Coming down here to the fourth bin, the lower class limit is 10, and the upper class limit is 12. To determine the class width, you take the difference of 4 minus 1, and that is 3. 7 minus 4, that is 3. 10 minus 7, you'll never guess what that is. How about 13 minus 10? So that is 3. And notice that these bins technically are all disjoint. Now it's going to be a little different in StatCrunch, so let's take a look, see at what's going on here. And when we go to do StatCrunch compared to the single value grouping in this one, it's a 2-step process. So just to bring that out. So since we want to have bin widths and formulate this stuff, the 2-step process in this case is step number 1 is to form the bins. So let's just note, to form the bins, we click on data and we come down here to bin. All right, so we have to find out where the data is. So the data is up here in variable 1. And down here, we're going to just notice that we have a bin width of 3 and we have a starting point of 1. So we'll just come over here and do a start point of 1 and a bin width of 3. All right, that's what we can go ahead and do. All right, and notice down here, this is very important. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. So our bin edges says include the left endpoint. So keep that in mind, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. Okay, so we click compute, and notice that it forms this new column. So this new column tells us that data 8 lives between 7 to 10. So data 5 lives between 4 to 7. So now when we go back, we have to do step 2. So step 2, you click stat, you come down here to tables, and you come over here to frequency, and this is our familiar from our previous video. So except this time we'll collect bin, all right, and then you can do your frequency, you can do your relative frequency and your cumulative frequency. Again, it's just holding down the command button on the Mac, control on your PC, and click compute. So notice here a little bit of a difference, okay? So notice here the bin says 1 to 4, but remember it said include the left endpoint. So 1 to 4, to read this is really 1 up to, but not including 4. So when these appear to be non-disjoint, but remember that little option that said include the left endpoint. So on each one of the bins, we don't include the 4, and notice that the 4 is actually down here. All right, so when we go to do this, the way that we really read this is 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9. We go 1 less on this upper class limit. So technically, because the data are discrete. All right, so to copy this table, we just come over here, come in here again, Command A, Command C. We'll come over here to our this document here. We'll just come on over here and go Command V. It puts the table in here, and you can get rid of some of this stuff, and that's no longer needed. And again, you can change this. So this can come to 3, this comes to 6, this comes to 9, this comes to 12, and this comes to 15. All right, whoops, 15. But again, let's just notice that the frequency counts here, the frequency counts are exactly the same as the frequency counts in here. So 1, 10, 28. And now we've got our bins associated. Again, we can change that to customers. So this is for your project here. All right, and notice that the relative frequencies are all right there. Again, you just copy and type those in. So the moral of the story is when StatCrunch does the binning, you just got to remember that these endpoints here, when they appear to be overlapping, they're really not overlapping. We are not including the 4 here. We are not including the 7 and the 10 and so forth. Okay, so that's using what we call the limit point grouping. So that there is a name to this called the limit point grouping. So to create your histogram, again, you just come down here to histogram, and then you can choose this histogram, and then again, we'll just make it the same thing. So we'll just go 1, and our bin width is 3. So we click compute, and here is what our data set now looks like. And let's just observe that this one goes into this bar, and notice that this 4 goes into this bar. And notice when you hover on the bar, it's saying 4 up to but not including 7. Okay, so to copy the graph over, we'll just click Options, Copy, and now notice it says I'm holding the Control button on my Mac, and I'm clicking, and right here it says Copy Image, just like it says to do. And on your PC, you should have pretty much the same thing. So I'll come over here to my Word document, and I will come right here and Command V and paste this in right here. Again, this part is for your project, the Word copy paste stuff. Okay, so that is everything I wanted to say regarding this limit point or limit grouping technique, which the author does talk about, but he does not use that name. Okay, so that and these graphs, again, you can just come back. You got your dot plot graph. You've got a box plot we'll come back to, stem and leaf plot. Again, you just pop these bad boys out, and here you go. And you can make some adjustments on these stem and leaf plots. Okay, so the idea here is you can come down here and, you know, change your groupings and do some other things as well. All right, the last one we have is when you have data that is integered value. So here's our data set right here. And let me close this because I got to make sure I do this to save the data set for us. Okay, but again, we'll come back and we'll talk about this in just a moment. So with this one, here is our data set. It's integered value. And whenever you have continuous data like this, the grouping technique does have a formal name to it, and it is called cut point grouping. So if you hear me refer to this, it's called cut point grouping. And the cut point grouping is when you have integered values. So here what we'd like to do is to talk about creating our table. So again, when you come back to see the homework problem, here you have to come over here and notice it says construct a frequency using a class limit of 0 and a class width of 0.5. So again, this means that you would go from 0 to 0.5, but technically you don't go to 0.5. You have to go because the data, let's take a look, the data has 2 decimals. So you have to subtract 0.01 and not include that to keep our to keep these disjoint. So this would actually go to 0.49. Okay, and then the next one down here would be 0.5, and then that would go all the way up to not 1 but 0.99. So we have to be careful when we do this. And then the next one would go from 1 to 1.49. So let's take a peek, see at what's going on and what I'm trying to say here. Again, the class widths and the number of classes, the bins they all carry over from the previous one. So technically this is really a similar grouping technique to the previous one. All right, so let's get this into StatCrunch. Okay, so let me clear out this stuff. Or let me just check this. Maybe that'll do it for us. Boom, there it is. So notice you can see the groupings here. What I was saying, 1 to 1.49. See how these they're a little bit different here. This is what we would do. It's what the author was talking about here. All right, so we'll open this up. Come on over here to StatCrunch. And again, it's going to be the two-step process that we did in the limit grouping. So again, step 1 is to bin the data. So we'll come over here to bin, and we'll use this one, and we will go, we'll start at a minimum of 0, and the bin width is 0.5, and we will keep this include left endpoint, just like we did the last time. And yep, I'm notorious for doing this. Don't forget to put the variable name up there so it knows what to work with. So here are the bins. So now to create the table, we come over here to stat table. So this is part 2. All right, so this time we'll choose this guy, and then we'll choose all of these. I'm just choosing these, and again we click compute, and here they are. But note again, just like with the limit point grouping, all right, we have to make an adjustment and realize that this is not going to 0.5, it is going to 0.01 less. So it's going to be the 0.49, and then this upper bound is going to be again 0.99, and again this upper bound is actually going to be 0.49. So again, since I'm in there, I'll just do a Control A, Control C to copy, come back down here, and again, this is not for your homework, or you can if it will help you out, but just remember in this one, since it's 2 decimals, we have to subtract off 0.01, so we get 0.49, and here we get 1.99, here we get 1.49, and it just kind of alternates back and forth. 1.99, oops, 2.49, and 3, so 2.99, and 3.49, and 4. I feel like I'm off here. 4 to 4.49. Okay, so let's just observe that our bins is this is exactly what we'll type in, and then our frequencies will go here. Our relative frequencies are right there, and again it comes to the histogram. So again, we can come over here to our histogram. We can get rid of this, compute stat, our graph, histogram, and again I'm going to choose the relative frequency this time just for something different. Don't forget to choose your variable, and again we are going to start at 0, and we're going to put in 0.5 as our bin width, and here is our histogram. So again, you just have to come over here and make sure that you choose the right one. So looks like this one is pretty much matching what we've got here, and let's just observe that it appears that this one is matching what we have as well. So you just make them a little bigger, make sure that you match them. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you make these group frequency tables with StatCrunch. Or again, if you so choose and desire, you can make these classes by yourself. You can do them by hand, and feel free. I'm just showing you how to do it this way, and I hope this video helps. Thanks a lot. Bye.